Hello and welcome to Buy Africa, the show where we focus on investment opportunities around the continent. I'm Teshepho Modiba and thanks for joining me. Tonight, Mr. Africa returns, Langa Madonko, investment principal at Zala Capital. Mr. Africa looking dapper. I think I may need to re-look at my wardrobe actually. This is quite impressive.
No, it's all my other suits are at the dry cleaners. So.
All right, cool. What are we talking about today? West Africa?
Yeah, so today we're going to take a look at West Africa and take a look at some of the activity that we anticipate this year in terms of IPOs in the region.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of uptick and the markets are looking forward to some of the listings that are going to take place there.
Before we delve into that, let's start where we always start. The region, economically, where are we?
So I think in recent times what we've seen is, well, let's talk about Africa's biggest economy, Nigeria. Currently, after the free float of the Naira, it's taken a bit of a knock, and that's having implications on the economy. But it's also created opportunities for players to move into the market and do innovative things. And I think the government is really trying to stimulate performance there. Mm-hmm. Ivory Coast continues to be a beacon.
Long term, is that a good thing? I mean, market commentators seem to think that it's a good thing long term for the Nigerian economy.
I think it is a good thing long term because I think once they did the whole allowing the currency to free float, now we are seeing fair value in terms of what the Naira should be worth, and I think that will stimulate the amount of investment that will come into the country.
Okay, let's move elsewhere in the region.
Then I think Ivory Coast continues to be a beacon in the region, continues to do absolutely well. Mm-hmm. The economy is continuing to grow, and we expect to see a lot of businesses that are coming out of there starting to become regional players and to start to also list onto the BRVM.
Right.
I think another country that we're looking at closely is Ghana. We're trying to also see what direction they're going to take. And I think despite some of the initial tethering that they'd experienced because of the growth in Ivory Coast, which slowed down Ghana's growth primarily, they are also starting to tick up, and they're trying to also now look at other revenue streams beyond just oil and cocoa.
Okay.
Yeah.
Senegal?
Senegal is also another country that I like. I think they are also doing well. I think we also anticipate to continue to see growth. I think Africa, particularly West Africa, continues to have greater impetus for growth. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that they are now starting to look at with greater interest is in the area of greater regional integration towards the issue of a unified passport and also integrating the stock exchange and the financial services in that space.
Which potentially bodes well for companies that are looking at a regional theme.
Yeah, I think anywhere in Africa that you're looking, a regional play is always going to make the greatest amount of sense because then, of course, apart from Nigeria, which has a very large population, you need the regional integration to give you the scale and the size of the economies that will make sense, particularly in the FMCG space and also in other manufacturing related entities where your retail is the offtake. You really want those critical numbers.
Okay. Let's dig into the meat of the discussion. IPOs, initial public offerings, which means more opportunities for investors to take advantage of opportunities.
Yes, I think we're going to see a lot more listings happening in West Africa, and I think a lot of the businesses that are going to come online are businesses that are related to one of the biggest employers on the continent, which is agriculture and agro-based businesses.
Right.
If you have been paying attention to what happened in Ghana, the Agro Bank wanted to list, but they've delayed that listing. But you'll continue to see that as you come also into Nigeria, there are several companies that have released also their prospectus for potential IPOs. And a lot of them play in that particular space.
Touch a little bit on Agribank. What do they do? What's their focus?
So their focus is around financing agro-business within the region.
Right.
And that would entail anything that goes from the insurance businesses that are providing specialist insurance into agriculture. That would also provide services for people who would want to make acquisitions of land around the agro space in particular.
So that particular offering potentially allows investors to take a leverage position on agriculture in the region?
Yeah, I think it would be a very strategic play in terms of understanding there's a big impetus around the food security story in Africa. And taking a position on such an entity would also give you exposure to not only the production side of agriculture, but also the processing and also the financial services elements of the value chain. Yeah.
That sounds quite exciting. Anything else that is coming online?
Also, if we keep coming down into Nigeria, there's potential fertilizer business that would that is looking at listing in Nigeria, and they are probably the only manufacturer of urea in the entire continent. And we look forward to seeing at what point they list throughout this period. And I think it's a fast-growing business, and there's lots of opportunity if they take advantage of the regional play, because there isn't anyone else who's doing that in that particular space. And I think they are also set to grow, and they are currently in a process where they are rehabilitating and improving their facilities around production, which will make them actually a global player in terms of scale and size of production.
Okay. It sounds quite exciting in terms of the potential here. A lot of the production coming from Nigeria?
Yeah, I think a lot of their production is in Nigeria. In particular, they produce, well, 100% there, but they've got the channels in which to distribute into the rest of the region. And I think one of the things that will bode well for them is that all the other countries that are around them are also starting to realize the great significance of the agro play.
Okay, so agriculture, nice theme. Any other agro businesses coming on board?
I think also if you just go into Senegal, there's a couple of businesses that are coming on board there, and they are looking more at businesses that are related now to processing of agro-based goods.
Right.
It's
so moving further down the value chain.
We're actually progressing in terms of our positioning and where we play in the value chain as African businesses.
Right.
So you are getting more businesses that are in the space around the production of tomato paste, where in previously all tomatoes that were sold in the region were generally fresh tomatoes. We're also getting businesses that are now doing tinning. So there's one business in particular that is playing in that space that we think, based on what we have seen and the type of investors they've looked to attract, should be listing in the next year or two. Yeah. Unfortunately, there we can't exactly divulge who they are, but I think we need to just pay close attention to the fast-growing businesses in the region.
Now, what's sparking this rampant growth, this increase in sophistication of agribusinesses? Is it government policies? Is it this large population? What's really the spark?
I think it's a multiplicity of factors. Number one, governments in Africa have realized the significance of the agro space in terms of promoting the food security. Right. And then number two, I think some of our funding institutions have become sophisticated enough to understand the value and how to deliver financial instruments from everywhere, from land acquisition all the way through the value chain, up to final canning or whatever method of preservation that you're going to use. And I think the third thing is also we have a growing middle class, so we then tend to find that Teshepho doesn't want to come home and cut tomatoes, so he wants them cut and tinned or made into a paste. So right. The market is becoming receptive to a more affluent type of product. Right. And then also there's also a greater interest in terms of the big food players on the potential of Africa because of the burgeoning population.
Is this also, I guess, a move to further sophistication of African manufacturing?
It is, and I think one of the things that, however, is hampering and slowing down how rapidly we're getting there is always the infrastructure story. So right. Your ability to evacuate the crops from the fields to the factory because of poor roads, your ability to run the factories because most of the plants now have to run on 25% electricity, then 75% diesel generation, keeps us at a place where the growth is not as rapid as it would be. Mm. All things being equal, if our infrastructure gets to the point where it needs to be, Africa, I see Africa becoming an exporter of many of these produce, from the tinned tomatoes to sun-dried to rice, but it's all a function of how quickly do we get to where we need to be.
Okay, spoken about agriculture, any other businesses that are piquing your interest in the region that are coming online?
I think we also need to be taking a look at some already listed businesses that I think should be delisting or will be delisting.
Okay.
And I think particularly if you look at in Nigeria, some of the listed banks are currently under pressure. And I think already we're starting to hear that they're taking strain, and there's potential regulatory flouting that might lead them to delisting.
So does that mean those banks are going under, or does that mean corporate action?
I think in the bigger picture, in the bigger frame of things, what we'll most probably see would be a consolidation.
Right.
Because I think one of the things that you notice is the ratio of banks to population in Africa is quite small. But one of the things that would probably allow us to get to the scale that we need to would be for the sector to balloon and then contract slightly. So some of the bigger banks who are in the top 4, top 5, maybe if I'm being generous, up to top 8, would look to acquire the smaller banks and amalgamate them into their own core business.
So probably now taking a closer look at those banks that are well capitalized to take advantage of those that aren't.
Yeah, and I think you also then start to realize that there will be some strategic play that will happen around some unlisted businesses that will come in and probably with the backing of international institutions be able to swallow entities that are perceived to be bigger than them.
Okay. So we've spoken broadly on banking and agriculture. Is this an area that you're excited about? Are you going to be filling your pockets with some of these companies as they come online?
I think having looked at a wide range of lists of the companies that are potentially coming online, there are several agro-businesses that we're looking at closely and seeing how it unfolds. Because also one of the other things that we would like to see is the quality and the strength of the business plans and the management in terms of dealing with the regulatory requirements. Because listing on the rest of the continent is not as easy as it would be locally here in South Africa.
Sure.
So that level of expertise and the dexterity with which these businesses prepare themselves is also a big factor in also determining how well they will perform when they come to market.
Perfect. Let's leave it there. That's Mr. Africa himself. Thanks to my guest, Langa Madonko, Investment Principal at Zala Capital. That's all from Buy Africa this week. Remember to follow me on Twitter. That's at Modiba_Teshepho. And follow Langa at Langa Donks. And send us your thoughts about the show using the hashtag Buy Africa. From myself and the team, goodbye.